And from our investors panel, we are going to move to places. Let's find out how destination marketing has been rebooted at a time when people can't travel freely. But please welcome Andrew van der Feltz, Senior Director, Business Development, EMEA and APAC, Expedia Media Solutions. Go ahead, Andrew.
Great. Thank you very much, Vera, for the introduction. And indeed, as you pointed out, what do countries do, what do destinations do when there are very few places which are open, travel is restricted, and there's a massive shift to domestic tourism from international tourism. Hopefully in the next 10 minutes I can shed some light on what we've seen, what we are seeing, and from two sides, data from our own sites. As you know, we're a two-sided platform, so we're able to see the interaction from consumers with our content, providing us with a huge amount of information in terms of what they're doing right now, what they're searching for in particular. And then we've conducted a secondary research to get a little bit more about the sentiment as well around the decisions that they're taking, and how can this information, this data and information provide our destinations with the insights they need in order to create strategies to navigate this rather turbulent times. One of the main questions that we always get is, when is the right time to market? And that remains a very open question. And the world has turned to becoming quite opportunistic, taking advantage of opportunities when lockdowns are removed and green lanes are opened as a result. So hopefully in the next 10 minutes I can give a little bit of insight into that. Before I do a quick introduction, Vera, you introduced me, but just to point out that prior to joining Expedia Media Solutions, which is a digital advertising arm of Expedia Group, I spent formative years, 20 years, working for destinations in Europe, predominantly the Dutch National Tourism Board and Scotland as well. So two different destinations, but I understand very much the turbulent time that we're in right now, and I'm trying to understand the way to navigate through that. Key point is that travel hasn't stopped effectively. It's changed predominantly around the world. But we are still seeing, obviously, people coming to our sites, searching for destinations and booking on destinations as well. So travel hasn't stopped. It's just changed in terms of how consumers behave, how they consume destination messages and information, and then how they translate that in terms of where to go and when to go. If I look at a couple of slides or a couple of data points here, which takes us back to the beginning of this episode, I don't think this comes as any surprise to anybody in terms of the oscillation that we see across all the super regions in terms of the search demand. And you can see from March 30th there, across all the regions, it's been going up week on week in terms of the oscillation. So this is showing you a week on week search growth. If you do it in a cumulative process, you'll see it go up. So apologies, I was muted myself by accident there. Hopefully you're able to see or haven't missed too much. I was talking about the data points on these two this slide, showing the oscillation in the destinations and super regions in terms of the growth of searches across all of the destinations has been continuing since the pandemic began in early March or end of March. So what we do see, though, is a great difference between domestic searches and international searches. And again, this changes depending on where you are in the world, dependent on what the governments are issuing in terms of warnings or opening of green lanes between different destinations. So it is an oscillating picture and will continue to do so and be that way going into the future. What is interesting, though, is the booking windows certainly has changed quite a lot from the beginning. When the pandemic started, there was a surge in people putting off their holidays, it seems, by thinking that this would be over within a 3 to 4 month period. So people were really pushing out their searches to 61 to 90 days, a massive surge in that, but also in the 31 to 60 day period. And then as we went through the period, people became realistic in terms of how the travel had changed and the opportunities had changed, and it became very much a 0 to 21 day booking window. predominantly from a domestic point of view, people wanting to take their holidays and traveling in a domestic sphere, and therefore making those decisions in a very short time. But also, as we see in different parts of the world, in particular in EMEA, where opportunities arise, people are taking those opportunities, knowing the risks that are that they take by traveling to a destination that might require a quarantine on the return or actually on their arrival in that destination. But very much at the moment and going forward, it's this 3-week, very short booking window that consumers are taking, and destinations can take from that the information in order to create their strategies moving forward. As we then look at when we carried out a survey on our own sites to understand a little bit about what people were actually doing on our sites when searching for destinations and searching for travel, we can see a change, a seismic shift from April to August in the main one, which was the cancellations, which obviously we saw huge amounts in the beginning of the pandemic, people changing their bookings, canceling the bookings, checking their status, and so forth. And then right now to August and into September, well, that has really tailed right off, and you see very much the shopping window come back right open up to 41%, 43% in the last couple of months. What is important for destinations is the light blue bar chart there is the dreaming phase. So at no point throughout this pandemic have people forgotten about how important travel is to them and have continued dreaming about where they go. And that's super important for destinations to understand that visibility is key throughout this pandemic in order to, as things come back, opportunities arise, these destinations are top of mind for travelers who are wishing to travel. We all have our top 10 list of places to go, and in order to get into that top 10, it takes visibility for a destination to maintain that top 10 slot, and it's easy to drop out of that if there is no visibility for that given destination. But this is super important in terms of that willingness to travel continues to grow as we go into August and September, as we see searches and bookings continue to grow. And where are these searches and bookings going to? Who are taking them? They were also asked in terms of what type of individual they fell into in terms of as a traveler. Were they opportunistic? Was it essential to travel? Were they putting it off? Were they cautious? And the main part here were these practical risk takers, people that actually trust in their own instincts when making decisions to travel. And that has only grown more over the period as people are taking on practical risks when traveling right now. It is an essential part of their lives, and they are choosing to travel to destinations that they feel make sense right now. And then the period that it was taken, we had 29% who were in the optimistic majority who would put it slightly off, but it was needed to travel as well. And we're seeing that obviously shift more into practical risk takers as well. And also the opportunistic, which was a small 7% back in April, has grown as a result as well. So people are traveling, people are looking at their taking common sense decisions in that travel, and it's up to destinations to make sure that they're getting that message across. And what message is it that they need to get across? We need to adapt to the consumer sentiment that's out there, hence why we undertook further research to really understand what consumers were looking for to do on a trip, or types of travel trips they were looking for. And to identify that, we looked at the type of trips, and you can see here, again, no surprise that domestic globally is by far and large the biggest majority in terms of trips that are being taken. And this is continuously changing as well, depending on where you're in the world, although there's still 24% that are traveling internationally. The biggest shift we see is people traveling by car right now. We've also seen on our own sites since the beginning of the pandemic that car rental has tripled in terms of its popularity, and we've seen that flights have reduced, but there's still quite a large majority of 53% that are prepared to step into a plane and fly to a destination to take a trip. And those that are traveling by car are actually, with 22% are willing to travel up to 1,500 miles to a destination. So you can see here that there's this massive intent still to travel, although the mode and the method of transportation might have changed in that sense. But we do see, obviously, the intent continue for flight as well, and different types of accommodation as such. We then look at the type of messaging that is so very important for destinations that across health and hygiene information is top. It is no longer a nice to have, but it's a prerequisite for every destination to get this across to the consumers, to the travelers, so that they feel confident. It's a matter of confidence and feeling of security that these travelers are looking for, and health and hygiene is top of that billing. Next to that is obviously information on what is open. It's great to obviously create demand for a destination, create the feeling that there is this high level health and hygiene, but if your attractions aren't open, your hotels aren't open, a destination doesn't seem to be open, it doesn't send a message of confidence to the traveler as such either. And finally, very importantly, there's huge pent-up demand for travel at the moment, and they're looking for perhaps their only trip this year or a secondary small one, but value for money becomes super, super important when creating the opportunities for destinations to promote themselves to this audience. So I hope that's given a slight holistic view of what the situation has been, how it's continuing to evolve. It remains an oscillation of demand between domestic and international travel. The key messages for destinations is about health and hygiene. The openness of the destination and value for money is certainly key. We need to adapt to this changing environment. And with that, I hope that gives a slight, albeit brief view on what destinations could be doing right now to attract the travelers that wish to travel. Thank you.